Good afternoon, Winnipeg High School Hockey League fans. Happy New Year. Welcome into the first edition of Scholasticks for 2026. It's episode 11, and it's brought to you by Terrico, Movement, Fitness, and Performance, Goaltenders, Elite Prospects, as well as Can Central, Sports Cards, and Memorabilia. So many sponsors that kind of get tongue-tied sometimes. Saying all of them, but we got a great show in store for you today. No guests will be joining this edition of the show, but what we're going to be doing is just taking a look at the standings from around all three divisions, looking at what this week has brought the teams that have been back in action. We'll take a look at some stats leaders as well, power rankings, and remember how I think it was shortly after the Husky Classic at the end of October where kind of tiered teams in like championship contender tiers, on the cusp tiers, things like that. Well, we're going to be revisiting that today, and you're going to see an updated list. So some teams may have moved down, some teams may have moved up, and other teams have stayed in the exact same place. We've also kind of changed up the terminology for the categories at this point in the season, since hockey, it's an ever-evolving sport, right? Continues to evolve, and I feel like our list should continue to evolve as this season goes along. As teams at the start of the season, how they were playing near that time, not the same teams at this point in the year, as they've had some time to get this season under their belt. A few months have gone by at this point, and looking forward to seeing what the rest of the season has in store for us here in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. We are going to start off by showing you the power rankings brought to you by the Manitoba High School Athletic Association. Be sure to check out their website at WHSHL.ca to check out all of the power rankings from many different sports in the high school landscape, but still top two, the Vincent Massey Trojans and the Oak Park Raiders. In fact, the top four hasn't changed since the last power rankings that they released. In fact, all teams remain the same as we take a look at the previous ranks. That lines up with their current ranks as of this past Monday. As for the A/AA tier, Warren, Niverville, and Gabriel all retain their top three spots. Same with Morris staying in the top four. The teams that have dropped, we've seen the Major Pratt Trojans as well as the Verdun Golden Bears fall a few spots. Boys of A / Deloraine / Wascata / Pearson jumping up a couple spots, as their previous rank was 7. And the rest of it stays the same. I will say one thing, though. I know that the Louis Riel Voyageurs are competing in the Winnipeg Free Press division, and they're classified as a AAA team, so they can't really be in the A/AA rankings. But as for the AAA/quadruple A rankings, I'm kind of shocked not to see Louis Riel in there at that point, to be honest with you, because look, this is a team that, of course, is gone up against maybe lower quality talent compared to teams like the Swan Valley Tigers. I assume that the Westman High School Hockey League is considered a higher rank compared to the Winnipeg Free Press division, but I don't think we can ignore what Louis Riel has done this year. This is a team that hasn't dropped a single game to this point in the season, 15-0. And I guess the reason why I'd like to see them maybe get into this top 10 at some point is, look, they lost to Collège Jean Sauvé in the finals of a tournament, the Tournoi Francophone, back in mid-December. But they competed, kept that game close for the most part. Not even at full strength. They had some key players missing, and when they were at full strength, like when taking a look at the power rankings, they were able to knock off a team like Collège Belleville, who's top 7, right? And I get it, that's just tournament play, and Collège Belleville that weekend I don't think was exactly on the top of their game, but still, like Louis Riel, in terms of the results they've had this year, they're undefeated through league play. The only real loss they've had this year was in that tournament final in La Tournoi Francophone against College Jean Sauvé. And given that they're a top 6 ranked team, I just feel like at some point Louis Riel, if they continue to win, a team that's currently at 15-0 and the heavy favorites in their division, coming off a championship last year, I just would like to see maybe a bit more respect for Louis Riel, and wouldn't mind seeing them crack that top 10 power rankings at some point this season. But yeah, we're going to get into where Louis Riel sits in our tiers, as well as all the rest of the teams from all 3 divisions in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. Coming up next on this edition of the Scholasticks podcast. Stay with us, as we're going to send it to a commercial break and be right back.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, The Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
Welcome back into the Scholasticks podcast, Winnipeg High School Hockey League fans. We got an exciting day ahead of us. After this podcast, I'm going to get set to go down to Dutton Arena as the Calvin Clippers take on the St. John's Ravenscourt Eagles. If you are interested in tuning in and you're unable to make it to the game, consider choosing G-Show Productions. We offer a high-quality live stream. There's going to be 2 different camera angles today too, but our main camera has zoom capabilities. Our second camera is going to be an iPad, but we offer full play-by-play commentary, analysis throughout the game, to keep you into the game, and give you something a bit different than if you were going to go to the rink yourself. Sure, the atmosphere, being in the rink and watching these teams live, like any sporting event, it's always the best when you do go in person, but I think we're a pretty good solution. And plus, a portion of your money that you spend, even though it is pay-per-view streams, it is going towards a great cause, as a portion of your money goes back to the Winnipeg High School Hockey League for them to help subsidize league costs and to help more kids play in this great sport, and, hoping to grow their league with the money that we're attempting to make for them this season. But yeah, it should be a great game tonight. We're going to have, I believe, 4 matchups next week on tap too. Busy month of January, which, yeah, pretty exciting, as before we know it, we're going to get into playoffs come February, as that's when the real games start. But as for the A division, we see the Oak Park Raiders on top at 13-1-2 this season. Most goals for in the league. Solid defensive numbers for the most part as well, but they're not quite on the level of Vincent Massey and Steinbach in that regard. Yeah, Vincent Massey, as the season has gone along, I talked about them being that juggernaut, that heavy favorite. It's been proven as the season has gone along that you can take this team down if you do play to your strengths, and we saw that with Steinbach 2 days ago on Wednesday. We saw it with Sturgeon Heights back near the end of 2025. So, Vincent Massey's also dropped games against teams like Lord Selkirk, and yeah, maybe a bit uncharacteristic for them as the season's gone along, but I also think that's just a testament to how talented this league is, and as the season goes along, we've been seeing that improvement, and how once teams start to kind of catch up and really feel comfortable in their systems, the level of play between the top teams, the gap closes that much more, right? The margins become sort of even more razor thin. But to start off this week in the Platinum Promotions Division, St. Paul's with a huge win over College Belleville. A bit of an uncharacteristic season for St. Paul's, as they're usually one of the top teams in the high school hockey league. I know last year they were more so near the middle of the pack, but this year, as we take a look at the standings, been quite a drop-off from the passes. That was only their third win of the season. Belleville would bounce back nicely, though, 5-0 victory over Shaftesbury yesterday. Steinbach with that huge win over Vincent Massey, as mentioned. Sturgeon Heights, after spending time in Europe over the holiday break, competing in a tournament and seeing a bunch of great sights. We'll show you footage from that trip next week on the next edition of the Winnipeg High School Hockey League podcast. But big win for them coming back against St. Paul's. River East, it took a shootout for them to beat Westwood, as Westwood's been a team that's been improving as this season has gone along. And then CJS Miles Mac starting off with a close game against each other. All really great games to start off 2026 in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League, as we take a look at the points leaders from the Platinum Promotions Division. This top line duo of Karsten Ross and David Sadowski has been a nightmare for teams to handle this season. They've combined for over 80 points, just under 40 goals. Very dynamic duo with a pretty good counterpart on their line too, and Tyler Thuas, who his numbers aren't quite as gaudy, but still almost 2 points per game for him. Aiden DeLay leading the way for the Vincent Massey Trojans, and then Jace Anderson. He's been Sturgeon Heights MVP so far this season. The stats have backed that up. In terms of in the net, these stats are only filtered by goals against, but big reason why Vincent Massey has been so good, dating back to last year, has been their defensive play. That's continued strongly here throughout the early part of the season, as Nathan Dick and Noah Barnes have put up solid numbers, the exact same save percentage as we can see there, but both under 1.5 goals against per game is pretty ridiculous. Casha Moore as well has proven to be one of the top goaltenders in the league this year with a stunning save percentage and a really phenomenal goals against average. But taking all this into account and looking at these teams, where we'd place them in the tiers at this point. Now, the change in the tiers, I used to have heavy favorites. I think I just had contenders, or maybe I had favorites as well as one of the categories. But we've gotten rid of the heavy favorites category because I feel like these three teams that are in this group with Vincent Massey come Final Four, it's going to be a lot for Vincent Massey to potentially handle, especially in a best of three series, because Oak Park, they haven't gotten a win against Vincent Massey yet this year, but they play them close every single time. Sturgeon Heights have proven that they can take down Vincent Massey, as their top line talent came through big time in that game, and that they did win back earlier on in 2025. And they got fantastic goaltending, and just everyone on that team was giving it their all to block shots and gave one of the best efforts I've seen from that team this season. And then we just saw, Steinbach take down Vincent Massey, one of the top defensive teams in the league, alongside them. A team that plays with good speed, a team that is really good at taking away space in their own zone, and a team that's led by the likes of players like a Jager Buchert and others that have been high-level offensive talents in, some big-time moments so far this season. So I'd say that these teams are the favorites, just given what they've been able to do against a team like Vincent Massey, who I feel like, them being the defending champs, being as good as they are this season, they're kind of the measuring stick. You just take a look at not only how they've fared, but how these teams place in the standings. Like, CJS is only 4 points back, same with Belleville. But you take a look at the goals differential, they're just on another level compared to the rest of the teams here in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. So these are three teams, along with Vincent Massey, as I mentioned, that I think are very complete. And both have really fast teams with some good offensive talent to pair with that, and some solid goaltending too. And I think that in a playoff series, these three teams would probably most likely on paper have the best chance to take down a team like Vincent Massey, just given their intangibles, the way their rosters have built, and how they've fared this season. I do feel like the teams like the River East Kodiaks and the College Jean Sauvé Olympians have at least proven to themselves and to the Winnipeg High School Hockey League that they are contenders. River East has had, I guess, more bigger wins in terms of league play compared to College Jean Sauvé, most notably taking down the Vincent Massey Trojans near the end of December. And River East, of course, last year made it to the Final Four. Ended up losing to Vincent Massey. They've had a chance to play them a few times this year, but once you're able to beat a team like that, it creates a lot of good belief. This is still a team that's really fast, a team that plays very physical, and I think a team that come playoff time, if they match up with one of the top contenders, one of the favorites, they could give them a run for their money. Just based off of the style they play, I think it's very suited for playoff hockey with that speed and that aggression that River East has. And as for College Jean Sauvé, this has just been a team that's gotten better and better as this season has gone along. They have some good depth up front. A team that maybe at some points, maybe the only concern with them is letting their foot off the gas pedal. Getting a bit sloppy sometimes in their own end with the defensive details, but for the most part, when College Jean Sauvé is playing at their best, when Dominic Corcels and this coaching staff has this group on high alert and they're locked in, one of the quickest teams in the league and one of the toughest teams to contain, and we saw that on full display throughout the Tournoi Franco Fun as they pretty much dominated the whole weekend against the opponents they played against. Outside of a closer final near the beginning, CGS took over against Louis Riel, as mentioned. So I just feel like CGS, their game, maybe not as physical as River East, but they got the speed, I think, the skill, the depth, and pretty solid goaltending, I think, to be considered a contender at this point with a plus 10 goals differential. River East with a plus 14 goals differential. As for the teams on the cusp, the only team to move up, the Selkirk Royals, for Lord Selkirk, they ended up having a huge win against the Vincent Massey Trojans near the end of 2025 as well in December. This has been a team that, against the top teams all season long, when they've come to play, they've kept things close and maybe given some of the top teams in this league a scare. They've made things close against Vincent Massey, even beaten them at one point, as I just mentioned. They've played a competitive game against a team like Oak Park as well, and I just feel like for this Royals team, it's a team that, again, I think plays with some good structure. I think they got some solid goaltending. The talent they have up front has been able to do some good things this season, but I'm not quite ready to move them into the contender category just based off of where they are in the standings and given where their goal differential is at this point in the season. I think they're looking to get even more offense going as this season goes along. That may be one of the weaker parts of their team, maybe compared to the top-end teams that top-end talent isn't as prevalent compared to, the teams up top. But as for College Bellevue, still on the cusp. I think this is a team that could very well move into the contender status, but they haven't had, huge wins this season in terms of beating the top contenders in the league. They have kept things close, and they've managed to come away with wins against the teams beneath them in the standings. Of course, starting off 2026 with a loss against St. Paul's. Hurt, but coming back with a 5-0 victory just proves that this team is able to respond and move on to that next game fairly quickly, right? And shout out to Will Ham for, of course, securing his first career Winnipeg High School Hockey League shutout in that victory. College Bellevue hoping it's one of more to come for him in his College Belleville career. But this is a team with a lot of experience coming back, one of the most experienced teams in this A division, of course one of the top teams in B division last year, and I feel like Belleville, they have the potential to be so much more. All the pieces are there. It's just about how can they put it together. This is a team that of course ranks top 7 in the province at this point, right? They're a top 6 team in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League, but the goal differential not as strong as it could be. When this team is able to get to their game on their attack, they get physical, they start to play with speed. They're one of the toughest teams to stop in the league, but I think for Belleville it just comes down to more consistency from this group throughout this season and getting off to quicker starts. I think at times they've started off a bit slow, and that's kind of hurt this team playing from behind the 8 ball at points. So, yeah, work on a bit more consistency, put up some big wins as this season comes to an end, and maybe, just maybe, College Belleville could move in to the contender status. And as for work of progress, I've actually moved Miles Mack down just as this season has gone along. They've had some really tough stretches, started off undefeated and then went on a bit of a lengthy losing streak, got back in the win column again, but then went on about like a 5-game losing streak. And, this team, their goal differential, goals for, goals against, it really suffered in their, just taking a look back at the stats, really suffered back during the time span from November 14th to November 26th, where they gave up 24 goals against, which has been 40% of their goal differential this season during that span. In the next 4 games, though, they limited teams to 11 goals against. And to be fair, they ran into some really tough teams like Vincent Massey, like Oak Park throughout that November 14th to 26th stretch. But still, just based on the results so far with where Miles Mack is in the standings, they've fallen compared to the teams I had them grouped with before in terms of College Belleville, John Sauvé, Garden City, River East, right? And even Lord Selkirk, who I had as a work in progress to start off the season, has been able to jump a point over them with 2 games in hand. So yeah, that's why Miles Mack would drop down to work in progress. I feel like Westwood is close to on the cusp. They've been playing better as the season has gone along, but still the record not so pretty there, and a negative 20 goals against differential. And then for St. Paul's and Shaftesbury, I feel like based on their stats, it's fair to still keep them here in a work in progress. Just one of those years for those 2 programs in the Platinum Promotions Division. As for what's going to be happening in the league next week, there's going to be a loaded schedule in the Platinum Promotions Division. We're going to have at least one of those matchups. I know we'll have River East and Vincent Massey for you on Wednesday as a battle between 2 top teams in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League's Platinum Promotion Division. Sign me up for that. We're also going to have CJS and St. Paul's covered next week in terms of our Platinum Promotions Division coverage. For the full schedule for next week, check out gshowproductions.uscreen.io. We'll also be posting the full schedule on our website, our main website, shortly in the next few days on gshow.ca. Moving into the B Division, the only undefeated team left, not only in the B Division, but in the entirety of the Winnipeg High School Hockey League, is College Louis Riel, a team that is just, what a story for them, right? There was one point post-pandemic where this team went 0-48 in back-to-back seasons, right? Combined. And, just looking at last year, them being able to win a championship, a great moment for this program. By far the best team in the C Division, and they move up a division this year. Rumor is that they added a few more AAA players to their team this year, and yeah, with the returnees they've had, the new talent they've added in, they haven't really missed a beat. This team has lost like one true game all season long, and have also proven that they can beat you in different ways. For example, not starting off that great at all in La Tournoi Francophone against College, or CSLR, Leo Remillard. Had Louis Riel on the ropes. It's a tournament where it's kind of like if you lose one game, your chances of winning the gold medal become 0. It's basically like a single type of elimination tournament if you want to get to the gold. And in that game, in the third period, I believe Louis off the top of my head was at least down by 2 goals with under halfway left, and they were just able to propel back and rely on that high-end offense to win in a barn burner 9-7. But they've also proven that they can shut you down defensively. They've played in a lot of games this season where they've been able to put up a lot of goals and also limit the other team to very few. And there's most times where, well, Louis they don't spend much time in their own zone at all, just based off of their offensive attacks. So, yeah, everything's looked really nice so far this year for this Louis Voyageurs team, a team that not only has great 5-on-5 play, but also very potent on special teams. As for the rest of the teams, though, in the B division, Dakota continues to make a case for themselves to be a championship contender. Same with Springfield. The numbers there from Dakota, really strong defensively. The only team besides Louis that's given up under 40 goals against so far this season. As we take a look at the rest of the standings, Gabrois has fallen as the season has gone along. They started off as one of the top teams in the league and now down to 6th place. Still a +7 goals differential, but must be a bit disappointing to see the drop-off they have from the start of the season. They got off to. J.H. Bruns has also fallen to around the middle of the pack of the standings as the season has gone along. A way worse goal differential, though, compared to Gabrois, although they have played 3 more games than them. CSLR remains the last place team, but it's nice to see this team finally get into the win column and playing competitive hockey as this season has gone along. As for how this week has started off, in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League's Free Press Division, CPET was actually down twice against Leo Remillard and were able to find themselves coming back in that matchup 4-2. That's a matchup that we actually covered back on Monday. Check it out on our Uscreen service if you're interested in that. But then we see, Louis coming back strong with a 7-1 victory against SJR to remain undefeated. Dakota getting tested a bit against Stonewall, but proving that their offense could come through at a high level. Springfield taking down one of the top teams in the league in Calvin, as they, of course, like I said, continue to make their case for being a championship contender. Dakota with another close win yesterday, and then Springfield another 6-goal game against J.H. Bruns. It's going to be a triple header today. In the Winnipeg Free Press Division, we're going to have Calvin and SJR covered for you on our Uscreen service, which I'm excited. Haven't really seen SJR play outside of the Husky Classic this year on our network. As for the stats leaders here in the league, Luca Tetro had over 100 points last year. For him this season, he's averaged 3 points per game, which I believe, he plays 28 games. Not quite on pace for 100 points, but still, if you're able to put up over 80 points in the Winnipeg Free Press Division, that's pretty darn good. His teammate in John Thomas Cavell has also been really great. He's also had 3 points so far. Then we got some game changers from Springfield and Toby Hobday, son of Coach Hobday, as Coach's son been leading by example on the ice with his skill set this year. Triton Georgery also with a pretty nice stat line rounding out the top 5 as he's tied with Louis Jesse Traeger for 4th in points at 37. As for the goaltending leaders, Carter Hoozle still remains undefeated so far this year. The best goaltender in this league, I'd say, in terms of the save percentage so far. Probably would go to Devin Picklick just based off of the stats, even though he has a below 500 record, a 928 save percentage in the shutout. That's pretty good for a goaltender, considering that, players like Hoozle as well as Brady Cawson, if you can see it there through the text over top of the screen, are both subpar 900 save percentage. But yeah, for Churchill, haven't been quite able to put up the wins that they've hoped for so far this year. Just want to take a look, double checking the leaders from around the league here. So yeah, both of Dakota's goalies actually sub 900 save percentage. For the full statistics, check out Winnipeg High School Hockey League or winnipeghshl.ca. As we get into the tiers for the B division, decided to leave the heavy favorites category intact here because how could you not? It's the only undefeated team left with a 4 goals against differential that is miles above anyone in this division. And sure, they've had some close games at points as the season has gone along. Only winning 4-3 against Dakota on December 11th. But other than that, it hasn't really been close outside of CLR's games against Dakota, where Dakota's fallen to them only by a goal in each of their losses so far against Louis-Riel, and that could be potential finals series preview. Wouldn't be complaining about that, as 2 great defensive teams and an offensive juggernaut in Louis-Riel going up against a team with some good offensive numbers too in Dakota. I think that would be pretty entertaining for the fans. But yeah, for Louis-Riel, they got the offensive numbers. Their defensive numbers have been pretty solid too this year. They've given up the least goals against in the league so far, so I just feel like there's no real reason not to put them still as the heavy favorites. For Louis-Riel too, talk so much about guys like Luca Tétreault and John Thomas Cavell, but Jesse Traeger, Jacob Traeger, both at least with 35 points. This team also has 5 different players with at least 10 goals, and of course they're leading the way in Luca Tétreault with 32 tucks already, which is just absurd. But not only do they get high contributions from their forwards offensively, their defense can jump up into play. Notably players like the Goslings, both Luca and Miguel, have been really impactful on the back end. Same with the captain in Davino Lafreniere. And then goaltending-wise, you look at the numbers, Ben Gagne, a .907 save percentage. He's pretty much just had to make the key saves to help his team out this season, as Louis-Riel, for the most part, has limited the shots quite nicely this year. They've given up, just doing some math, in 15 games, only 19 shots against. So, yeah, this team is extremely well built from top to bottom. They've really built off of a great year from last year, winning a championship, moving up a division, and proving that they may be the class of this div by the end of it. Like I said, only undefeated team throughout all 3 divisions in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League so far this year. As for Dakota and Springfield, I feel like it's pretty obvious to put them here in the championship contenders category, especially with how Dakota's been able to keep things close against the Louis-Riel Voyageurs this season so far. Springfield, a high-powered offensive team that is also, giving up the 3rd least goals against in the league so far this year. A team led by Toby Hobday up front, and a team with, I think, a lot to like outside of Toby. Just pulling up their statistics, but yeah, Springfield, this was a group last year that was in the A division, got bumped down to the B division this year, and that's worked out pretty well for them. And yeah, outside of Hobday, they have 2 other players with at least 11 goals. This team has only seen 4 of their players not get on the board yet so far this season. Then you take a look at Dakota as well. This is a team that also has some nice depth too. So the trend here in this league is if you have solid depth, like I feel like in any hockey league, but if you're defensively sound, you get into the top 3, and that's exactly what these 3 teams have been able to do this season. Put up great offense and put up great defensive numbers too. Dakota and Springfield not quite on the level the same level compared to Luriel, but still just a cut above, and I'd say championship contenders. Wouldn't be surprised if these two teams, if they play their best and they were to match up with a team like the Luriel Voyageurs, would be able to give them a run for their money. And then you look at the teams on the cusp. I've knocked down Gabriel to this category. Just given that this team has dropped off significantly from the start of the season up until now in terms of their level of play. They are led by one of the most talented players in the league, however, in Logan Barnaby, who has continued to post strong numbers throughout this season, even though he's not quite top 5 anymore. For Barnaby, 20 goals scored, leads the team by 10, as the next best goal scorer on this team is Colin Legacy with 10 goals in 13 games played. But I feel like with them being moved down into on the cusp from the championship contender category, that just comes down to, I feel like outside of Barnaby and Legacy, like this team is lacking the results needed to be able to compete for a championship in the end. After Legacy, third most goals scored on this team, there's about a 5-way tie at only 3 goals is the total there, right? So they're going to need more out of their supporting cast if they want to make a run. Logan Barnaby, as good as he is, teams are going to key in on him, especially the top teams, right? Those top 3 like the Luriel Voyageurs, Dakota, and Springfield. And once you take him away, what do you have outside of that? It doesn't seem like on paper Gabriel has much outside of those top-end players. And then you take a look at their goaltending statistics. Unfortunately, Derek Poirier and Liam Girardin haven't proven that they can steal games yet this season too, right? So I'd say that's why those teams are on the cusp. As for Sanford, I moved them up from a work of progress into the on the cusp category because the Sanford team, I'm taking a look at their results as this season has gone along. They've gotten up to close to a 500 record. In the one game we saw them in, too, they were able to come away with a victory against CPET. But, yeah, just in terms of the ones they've had throughout the season as it's gone along, they've been able to go out and defeat teams like the Churchill Bulldogs, as well as the Stonewall Rams, and even going out and defeating the teams that are in their category, like the J.H. Bruns Broncos, teams like that. Now, this team did start off the season pretty slow. They got thrashed in their first 3 games. They did also lose to CSLR, who I have them in a tier below, but I feel like as Sanford has played this season, their most recent matchup, too, keeping it close against Dakota, only losing 3-2. This team has started to play better defensively as the season has gone along. They actually have one of the lowest goals against numbers in the league. It's just about if this team can get offense going, and I feel like once they can do that, them being on the cusp makes a lot of sense, because if you can start to get that offense going, if you can start to get more consistency in your win column, rise up the standings a bit more, and keep those defensive numbers around the same, this could be a team that I think rises up maybe potentially in a championship contender status. Maybe a bit of a hot take, but I like the way Sanford has looked as this season has gone along. As for the CPAC Canadians, they're the only team to fall back from on the cusp into work in progress, and the reason for that is you just take a look at CPET. They're a bottom 4 team in the league. They've given up the 3rd least goals in the Winnipeg Free Press division as well. And yeah, I mean, as this season has gone along, CPET, I think, has proven that obviously they came back against the Calvin Clippers when they were down in that game. I think that kind of took Calvin off guard. They were surprised to see CPET come back in that game back in December, in our last week of coverage. And of course, they were able to come back against CSLR as well. But I just feel like throughout this season, the overall results point to CPET not quite being on the cusp at this point. A team that, against the higher end teams in the league, I guess outside of Calvin, they haven't really fared too well against those sides. And yeah, they've even had some troubles, trying to pull away from the teams below them in the standings. So thought I'd bump them down because I feel like all the teams on the cusp, you look at their records, I'd say that comparing a team like Sanford compared to CPET, I just like the numbers from Sanford a bit better at this point in the season as we look at how next week's action is going to go in the Winnipeg Free Press Division. CPET's going to be starting off their week against Stonewall. Dakota takes on Bruns. CLR and Calvin. Louis Riel taking on Calvin. That should be a good game as Louis Riel looks to stay undefeated heading into next week. Also taking on Gabrois in what should be a pretty entertaining game there too. And then we'll end off with Gabrois and JH Bruns, a game that we'll be covering on the network next week, 7 days from now, as we make our first trip out to Ile-des-Chênes for 2026 and for this 2025-2026 season in general. We're going to throw it to a commercial break, and then I'll be back to go into the Price Division and end off this edition of the Scholasticks podcast here on your home for Winnipeg High School Hockey League coverage on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, The Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
Welcome back to this edition of Scholasticks, the Winnipeg High School Hockey League podcast. We've gone through the first two divisions, the top two divisions in the league so far, in the Platinum Promotions Division and the Winnipeg Free Press Division, putting these teams into tiers at this point, giving a refresh on a list I did earlier this season. For the first time here in 2026, we're going to do one more version of these lists right before playoff time, so just over a month from now, as playoffs will be here before we know it. I know I might be sounding like a broken record, but I just can't believe it's 2026 already. To be honest with you, Winnipeg High School Hockey League fans, felt like 2025 personally flew by, but looking forward to a great year ahead, and we hope that you have yourselves your best year yet. But moving into the Price Division, the Warren Wildcats, last year's finalists, right near the top again. Well, actually at the top. They're the number one team in the Price Division. One of their goaltenders commented on our Instagram page. I feel like he's a bit disappointed we don't have a game scheduled for them this month. But don't worry, Warren Wildcats fans. If you're tuning into this, expect at least a couple of games near the start of February when we release that schedule, as don't worry, we have not forgotten about you. The only team that hasn't dropped a game in regulation as of yet is the Niverville Panthers. Had a chance to see them in action for the first time on Tuesday in Niverville, and pretty cool that they had a chance to clean the ice twice. I don't know if there's many teams, if any, besides them in this league that gets that luxury. But yeah, I was a bit shocked that they did give them two floods in a exciting game between them and the Linden Christian Wings, as we take a look at how this week has started in the return to play in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. A lot of close games through Tuesday. In those three, as we can see there, Murdoch McKay coming away with one of their biggest wins of the season against West Kildonan. Niverville scoring 3 unanswered to defeat the Linden Christian Wings, and then Windsor Park and Kildonan East going down to the wire at Gateway Arena as Windsor Park came away with the 4-3 victory. Wednesday was a bit different. West K, angry from their loss on Tuesday, took that out on John Taylor with an 8-2 thumping. Murdoch McKay keeping up their winning ways with a 5-3 victory over Edward Schreier, a.k.a. The Beausejour Barons, and then the Warren Wildcats yesterday in the lone Thursday game, a drubbing over Lendar, 8-1 for the number 1 team in the Price Division. Niverville West K today, really exciting matchup on tap. Windsor Park taking on Linden Christian at home at St. Vital Centennial Arena, and then Pinawa goes back home to take on Beausejour as a all-Roro Manitoba matchup to end off things in the Price Division. Will get set to have its puck dropped on it at 5 p.m. Central Time. As for the points leaders, Linden Christian, they've enjoyed the contributions from Anderson Fisher very much this year. He's had 2 points per game as a defenseman. Let that sink in. That is ridiculous numbers put up from the Linden Christian captain so far this year. Niverville, Emery Gonzaga, and Ethan King within the top 5 in points. Braden Hummerston for Beausejour, the Barons. He's also had 2 points per game as he's been a standout for this Beausejour team so far this season. Then Murdoch with Leonardo Phelps and Brody Krellin, they round out the top 5 in points as they're near 2 points per game for themselves too. Goaltenders in this league, well, we've showed you goals against averages, that being the stat that we're going off of in this top 5, but also backing up a really strong goals against average with a strong save percentage is Mason Clausen for Warren, returning to the team this year. He's only dropped 1 game so far. He's allowed 11 goals in 10 games played. That is just ridiculous. 4 shutouts for the kid. Potentially Warren's MVP this season just based off of how this team has fared as this year has gone along. Levi Brandt also with strong numbers this year. The only loss he suffered was in extra time against Warren, and then the rest of the goaltenders here, as you can see. You want the full list of goaltender stats, be sure to check out winnipeghshl.ca for all the details. But let's get into the tiers now, shall we? Before, I just had it as the heavy favorites, Niverville, as they start off as, the only undefeated team in the league through, I believe it was through the first, I'm trying to think back how many games they were into it when I last did this. So I'm just taking a look back right now at the Winnipeg High School Hockey League's website. Because I remember doing the first set of this list back right after the Husky Classic had just concluded. So yeah, I guess at the time, Niverville was about 5 games into the season, but they started off undefeated, and they were pumping teams by scores of 7-1, 9-2, 10-3, 7-2, and then 6-1 on the 30th even. This team, in fact, through every single game outside of their opening game of the season, so from the 14th up until the 3rd, which December 8th on the Monday would have been their first loss and only loss of the season to the Warren Wildcats in overtime. But leading up to that point, this team, the lowest amount of goals they scored in a game was 6, and that was back against Edward Schreier on November 18th, as well as they scored 6 in a 6-4 win over Murdoch McKay back on December 2nd. So, yeah, to start off this season, just based off of the offensive numbers and the defensive numbers they were putting up, sure, it was against, as the season's gone along, looking back, it was against teams near the bottom of the standings. But hey, at that time, Niverville had earned that respect to be the heavy favorite. Since then, things have changed, though. However, as mentioned, as Warren is now the top team in the league. Lorette only 2 points behind Niverville. West Kildonan as well has gotten better as this season has gone along. Same with Murdoch McKay, who's continued to have a really strong record as this season has continued on in 2025-2026. As for the tiers, though, just realizing that Murdoch McKay should have been in the favorites category, but I guess I didn't put them in that category. I forgot to edit that in, but we'll start off with the favorites, like the Warren Wildcats, best defensive team in the league so far, backstopped by the best goaltender in the league to this point in Mason Clausen. They've also been able to put up some solid offensive numbers now compared to the teams like Niverville in this league. Of course, they have a significant less amount of goals compared to this Panthers side, but for this Warren Wildcats team, within those 72 goals that they've scored so far this season, a lot of depth from this lineup, a lineup that Lachlan McLean is a big fan of their speed, as it's a very quick Warren Wildcats team. But when you take a look at their goal scorers, it's pretty much by committee for this group, right? Ty Olson and Braden Ivany both lead the team with 12 goals each, and then there's not much separation after that from throughout the middle of the lineup. After Ivany, the next most goals would be from Lexon Hogg at 9, and then after that it would be from Kaylin Ivany at 8. And all the numbers are pretty much similar throughout the middle of the lineup there for this team, and when you're able to get strong defense and get good contributions from your depth, Warren makes themselves, I think, a really tough outcome playoff time. And right now, you got to put them near the top of the favorites category, right? As for the Niverville Panthers, a team with a lot of depth, the most high-powered offense in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League's Price Division, and a team that has defended pretty well so far this season, as they've given up the second least goals against. They still haven't dropped a game in regulation. The one game they lost, it was in overtime to the Warren Wildcats, as that game could potentially be one of the finals previews games of this season, if it is Niverville and Warren in the finals. But yeah, I feel like with Niverville, they're all around playing the record so far. Not the heavy favorite as I once thought they would be, but definitely a favorite. And then you look at Lorette, a team that moves the puck really well, a team in their own right has a lot of good depth, really good scoring throughout this team's lineup, and they've also been able to get, some big-time goaltending at points from their netminders this season. And for Lorette, they've been able to go out and compete with some of the best teams in the league this season in the Price Division. Had a really strong showing back at La Tournoi Franco Fun during our weekend of coverage then. But yeah, just taking a look at the big wins that Lorette has had this season, taking a look at the games that they've played. Of course, being able to defeat West Kildonan back earlier in the season by a score of 3-0. They didn't fare so well in their last matchup, but after losing 5-2 a few games later, they go out and beat the Warren Wildcats back on November 24th, on that Monday back in 2025. So, yeah, Lorette, they got the talent as well as the results to back up their case to be a favorite in this league. And then I really like West Kildonan. From seeing them play, this is a team that plays with some good pace, really strong along the boards, a team that also, I think when taking a look at their stats, have done a really good job at staying disciplined and playing, a physical but yet clean style of hockey this season, coached very well by their bench boss in Jamie Leach, who is not only a former NHL player, but a Stanley Cup champion in his past. So yeah, I mean, when you look at West Kildonan, a team that was in the A division last year, dropped down a few spots, it seems like that was the right decision because this team has been faring really well in the C division this year. Of course, losing against Murdoch McKay to start off this week, but coming back with an 8-2 victory. It's a team that responds very well after a loss. And a team that hasn't dropped many to start off the season, as they've only lost 2 through their 12 games. Like the teams in front of them, the 3 that I mentioned, this is a team that has solid depth throughout their lineup. Their top end goal scorer compared to their third goal scorer, there's not much difference, as Layden Neville leads this team with 12 goals. Luke Benera second on the team with 11, and then Colton Loreth would be third on the team with 10. And then after that, there's not much of a drop-off with Evan Nishi as the fourth most goals on this team is at 7. So again, West Kildonan with some good depth. They've also had some pretty solid goaltending this season from Mateo Diaz as well as O'Shea Ramis. And a team that is looking to be a thorn in the side of the top contenders this season, as I'd say they're into the favorites category. As for Linden Christian, they've proven that they can come away with big wins this season, beating Lorette near the end of 2025 back in December, a team that isn't quite out of games ever, really, this season, as they've proven it. A team that, of course, is led by their captain, their leader in Anderson Fisher, who not only leads the team in points, but leads the whole C division. It's a team that I think plays really well structurally, a team that once they can hem you in on the forecheck, it's tough to stop this team. They just haven't been able to put up big wins consistently this season against the top-end teams, even though they've been able to go out and beat a team like Lorette, as mentioned near the end of 2025. As for Murdoch McKay, this is a team that, like I said, should have been the favorites category. They've been able to go out and beat a team like the West Kildonan Wolverines, who, of course, are in this category, a team that has competed well against the top-end teams throughout this league this season, a team like Linden Christian that plays structurally sound. They have a good forecheck, nice offensive talent. As we take a look at Murdoch McKay, their numbers bit on the lower side compared to the top 3 teams in the league, but still really good defensively, sound in their own end. And when you take a look at Murdoch McKay, their goal scoring, where it's coming from, I feel like this is a theme with the top teams, especially in the C division. But in terms of Murdoch, their offensive output, they've been able to get that depth scoring in at a high level with Leonardo Phelps and, of course, Brody Crowlin, both top 5 in points in the league, but after that, not much of a drop-off, as Crowlin is the second leading goal scorer on this team with 12 goals. After that, it drops off to Lucas LaRue at 9 goals, and then, well, throughout the lineup, we've seen, compared to the other teams, good scoring by committee, and then in net as well, Brady Tan has been really solid. His backup in Ryder Carnegie has been able to be solid in goal as well. Neither have shutouts as of yet, but wouldn't be surprised to see Brady Tan put one up as the season goes along. But yeah, I think that Murdoch McKay, like West Kildonan, like Lorette, like Niverville, like Warren, they have the pieces, I think, to be a championship contender. I think that at this point, given their top 4 team, we obviously should have them in the favorites category. But yeah, Murdoch this season, I think they got to be really pleased with what they've seen from this group at this point. And as for the others, taking a look at the standings here in this league, Edward Schreier and the rest of these teams, as mentioned, are below 500. I think a team like the Barons, they can definitely give you a run for your money if you're not on the top of their game. But I just feel like, taking a look at these teams in the others category, comparing them to, the top end teams here in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League, if I was a betting man heading into these games. I just feel like these teams don't quite have that makeup that's necessary to compete not only for the course of 60 minutes of a game or I guess 50 minutes, since there's two 15-minute periods and then a third period that consists of 20 minutes in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League compared to the other leagues we covered, which have three 20-minute periods. But yeah, I just feel like the makeup of these teams compared to the six we've talked about before, I just feel like the makeup of the six teams above them is a bit better. And if I'm looking at a playoff series throughout, a 50-minute game, and I'm a betting man, I'm probably leaning on one of these teams above the teams in the others category, especially in a best 2 out of 3 series when, anything can happen. But I just feel like the 4 teams, or what should be 5 teams in the favorites category, as well as Linden Christian in the contenders category, have a much better shot of going further than the teams. In the last category, the others category here for the price division, as we take a look at our tiers, our final set of teams in these tiers for this edition of Scholasticks in episode 11. As for next week in the price division, we are going to have Niverville and West Kildonan broadcasted for you next Thursday. Other than that, that's all the price division action we'll be bringing you next week. Like I said, check out our Uscreen page as well as our Instagram, as we've posted the full schedule on our Instagram, and we've also posted all the games up until the end of next week. So Gabois and JH Bruns next Friday on the 16th is the latest game that you'll be able to purchase. But during this weekend, I'm going to be uploading the schedule for the week after next week, and then after that, we'll upload the final schedule when the time does come. But yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments where you think we got things right, got things wrong on these tier lists. Who you're thinking is your favorite, your pick to make it to the finals and come home with the championship this season throughout these 3 divisions in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. And anything else you may want to share your thoughts on that we talked about in today's episode, feel free to do that as well. We're going to throw it to a promo screen, and then I'll be back for some final words on this edition of Scholastics. Well, you made it to the end of this edition of Scholastics. Thank you so much for tuning into this one. If you did, Winnipeg High School Hockey League fans, I've been your host, Graeme, the gshow Forsyth. If you did enjoy this edition of the podcast, be sure to either subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any future uploads, as well as consider liking this episode so more people that may be interested in content like this on the YouTube platform will be able to see it. It could end up in their algorithm if this episode and other episodes get pushed enough. But if you decide not to do any of those 3 things, I still appreciate you for tuning in. Special thanks to our sponsors in Terrico, Movement Fitness and Performance, Goaltenders, Elite Prospects, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia for sponsoring another edition of the show. Pump that. I got none of my sponsors mixed up that time, but as for next week, we'll be coming out with episode 12. All the details will be available on our website as well as our Instagram leading up until that episode. Be sure to check it out next week, as we're going to be joined by, I'm hoping, some guests from around the league. And yeah, if you're interested in checking out our content outside of these podcasts, be sure to check out our Uscreen service. gshowproductions.uscreen.io is where you can find us. And yeah, that's where all of our Winnipeg High School Hockey League game day live streams are broadcasted live at. And of course, It does cost some money to watch. Our prices are only at $5 for the rest of the regular season, and a portion of your money that you spend on game days goes back to the Winnipeg High School Hockey League for them to help subsidize league costs and to help fuel high school hockey in the province of Manitoba. Yeah, pumped for next week. We're going to have 4 Winnipeg High School Hockey League game days on tap. We're also going to be, of course, broadcasting the Kelvin Clippers taking on the St. John's Ravenscourt Eagles today at 3:50 p.m. at Dutton Arena. We're going to have another edition of MMJHL Game Day coming up tonight, as well as 3 editions of Manitoba Female U18 AAA Hockey League Game Day. And, of course, next week, well, we'll have a pretty jam-packed schedule with not only Winnipeg High School Hockey League coverage, but everything else we're going to have in store on our schedule. Until then, everybody, I've been your host, Graeme, the G Show Forsyth, peacing out and waving so long, thanking you once again for tuning in to this edition of the Scholasticks podcast, the official Winnipeg High School Hockey League podcast on your home for high school hockey league coverage here in Manitoba on G Show Productions on gshow.ca. Until next week, everybody, we'll see you then. Take care.